This is one of the most challenging areas of business for me as a bookish introvert. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings around how we portray ourselves online.
It's awful. It's hard. Hey, it's your girl Nancy Red, and this is season 4 of Mompreneurs, where we celebrate beautiful Black entrepreneurs who are also amazing moms. Now, every week, I'm chatting with my guests about how they're killing it simultaneously as a business mogul and a mom, listening to their inspiring journeys and incredible advice. Now, mamas of littles, listen up, because my next guest is here to get your baby college bound from before they can even speak. Maya Payne Smart is an incredible woman that I have known for over half my life. And she is a book lover, she is a literacy advocate, and she is the author of Reading for Our Lives, a literacy action plan from birth to 6. And now it is out in paperback, which is very exciting. And it is a must read for parents and caregivers if they have anyone in their life that they care about making a difference for their future. Maya, I am so glad to have you here with us. You are absolutely amazing.
Thank you so much for having me, Nancy. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so before we get into the business side of things, talking about your book, your literacy advocacy, and more, talk to us about what's going on in your household. Let's get a little personal. Who puts the mom in your mompreneur?
So I'm the daughter of one fabulous 13-year-old, Zora, who's named after the author Zora Neale Hurston. And she has just transformed my life in so many wonderful ways. So it's an honor to be her mom and to drive her all around creation for her various sports and activities. Also, my husband, Shaka, who's a basketball coach at Marquette University, and my mom, we're all very privileged and blessed to have my mom, Margaret Payne, in the house with us as well. So we have a 4-person household. My mom is an only child, I'm an only child, and my daughter is an only child. So we have a special
3 generations of only child girls.
Yeah. My husband's completely outnumbered in the house.
But he loves it because you're not just 3 generations of only children who happen to be girls, but you're 3 generations of literacy lovers. This whole literacy advocacy did not start with you, correct?
Correct. So my mom's mom was a big reader. So my mom grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and her mom was in something called the Browsers Have You Read It book club. So I heard about this, mythical book club growing up. As a child growing up in Akron, Ohio, my mom's bookshelf actually was in my room. So I grew up looking at all the spines of these amazing novels and books that were part of my mom's collection that just happened to overflow into my room. So I feel like I've just been surrounded by books themselves, but also just an appreciation for Black literature and authors since I was as long as I can remember. My mom spent her entire career working at Kent State University. So I spent those childhood summers going to Kent State for kids. And so education was always a big part of our household. At Kent State, and this was the late 80s, there was a Virginia Hamilton children's book conference. And so that was also just sort of a part of the backdrop of my life. So definitely came by this love of books and reading, honestly.
So education as a profession has been part of your life, but it wasn't always business oriented, even for you. Talk to us about the beginnings of how you became a literacy advocate. How did you get into the world of really looking at early childhood development and what it means to you as something that you care about as a cause?
Motherhood absolutely prompted all of my work in early literacy. My background from my master's degree is in journalism, and I spent the early part of that career writing about small businesses and entrepreneurs for Black Enterprise and other publications. And it wasn't until I had my daughter in 2011 that I started coming across news articles about vast reading achievement disparities between Black children and white children and children from less wealthy backgrounds and more privileged backgrounds. And so it was absolutely the origin of this entire interest of digging deeply into the mechanics of how you learn to read started with becoming a mom.
I love that. And so you became a mom. And before you became an author, and this book is absolutely incredible, it's been out in hardback for a little bit, and it's come out here in paperback now. It's very exciting. Get your copy. But before this, this was a passion of yours that you expressed in different ways. How have you been a literacy advocate and an educator before the book came out?
Before the book came out, I would sort of summarize the things that I had learned as a result of just being a curious parent asking these questions. I would write blog posts on different topics related to books that I loved, or also research about how kids learn to read. So it started really as blog posts and just me wanting to share what I had learned. Also, when we lived in Richmond, Virginia, where Zora was born, there's a big holiday fundraising campaign with the Richmond Times-Dispatch and community organizations. And I was the Richmond Christmas mother one year, and I sort of made books my platform. And we decorated a trolley to capture images from the classic book, The Snowy Day. I gave away copies of that board book along the parade route. Other people got in on the excitement and started donating books. So just by the end of that holiday season, we had given out 1,000 copies of The Snowy Day and Each Kindness by Jacqueline Woodson, and a number of other books by local authors as well. So that sort of was my official, I would say, coming out party as a literary or literacy advocate.
That's wonderful. A lot of times, the passion that we find that turns into a business often starts with volunteer work, often starts with things like that. How did it morph from, being the incredible book Santa, essentially, giving away, thousands of dollars of books, being such a support in the community, to continuing that type of nurturing, the type of volunteerism with a more business component that includes the book, the advocacy, the talking, the education? How did you morph from mom who's into books to business mom, mompreneur, who's got an incredible, well-received book and a whole enterprise?
It was and continues to be, I'd say, a very slow transition into fully embracing the entrepreneurial elements and the business side of it. So we moved to Austin, Texas when Zora was a toddler and preschooler. And there I really took my interest in the learning about the mechanics of reading and how kids gain the skills that they need. Took that to a different level through a ton of volunteering. So spent almost 5 years there, volunteering with organizations like literacy coalitions and book festivals and early childhood education programs and library foundations, and just any way that I could gain sort of behind the scenes insights into all these different initiatives that were going to help kids become readers. And then I got to a point, I was also doing a lot of author interviews. So I had the opportunity while in Austin to interview Zadie Smith and just a number of other authors, and wrote for Kirkus Reviews. And I felt like I was doing a lot of things that were sort of writing adjacent, but I wasn't writing myself. And at that point I had, years of blog posts on this topic. And it was really COVID, during the time when we were all quarantined at home, that I really buckled down and finished a proposal, got an agent, got a book deal. And then a slow transition from turning the book into a business. The book is intended for parents of young children, and the business is more oriented toward serving, creating workshops and doing presentations for professionals who work with children. So that is librarians and early childhood educators, and even some state departments of education have hired me to do some training as well. So it's been a slow, gradual transition.
But you built a really solid foundation.
Yes, I think that people often tell you to pursue your passions in business. And what they don't tell you is that when you're doing something that you love, would do for free, and have done for free, it really is the mindset shift is the hardest part of turning it into a business.
Right, because there's value in doing it for free. But talk to us about the value, the different type of value that you've gotten out of it now that you're being paid. Because it's not a zero-sum game, but it is important, especially as a mother, especially as a giver, a nurturer, to get something out of it for yourself.
I think that having my daughter and knowing that she's watching me, knowing that she's old enough to observe how I move in the world, really adds a level of accountability to everything that I do. And I want her more than anything, as she grows and develops and pursues her interests, whatever they may be professionally, I want her to always value herself and know her worth. And so she's going to learn that more from seeing how I move in the world and what I do, how I conduct myself, how I'm, slowly and systematically building this business. She's going to learn more from watching me than from me giving her lectures or telling her how she should be.
So, in your own words, I want to talk a little bit about the book and explain to people what it is, because a lot of our listeners are 100% the type of moms who want their kids to be that kid in kindergarten who's already reading a chapter book. But before we get into that, let's explain how the book is not the business. Talk to us about Maya Payne Mompreneur. What is your business that the book helps to promote and propagate?
Maya Payne, Mompreneur, is just a woman on a mission to help every child have the strong foundation in language and literacy that they need to thrive as readers and in school, and more importantly, just in their lives beyond the walls of school. There in our nation is a lot of discussion and news headlines around just terrible reading achievement scores across the board in the nation, but particularly among certain demographics. And people think that the solution to that is with teacher training and magic reading curricula and high dosage tutoring. And every single one of those things is extraordinarily important. But all of those things rest on a foundation that parents build. And so my mission is to spread the words to parents that we really are our children's first teachers. And we're also their best and fiercest educational advocates when we assume that responsibility. So the work is about educating anyone, any professionals who interact with parents about ways that they can help parents nurture and teach language and literacy skills at home.
I love that. So you're giving them the tools to be more effective in their teaching.
Yes. So initially I started out I have sort of a signature workshop called How to Give Your Child a Smart Start that is for parents. And so one of the earliest iterations of this workshop I did for Chicago Public Library and presented to an audience of parents on a Sunday afternoon. And then the next morning I did a half-day training for all of their youth services librarians. Because librarians, if you think about it, are trained in wonderful, amazing children's literature and how to find information in their databases and on the shelves, but they haven't been trained in how reading develops and some of the things that kids need in order to become independent readers themselves. And so that was sort of my first professional development workshop, and it was immediately taking me in a direction that I hadn't anticipated going, because I thought of the book as for parents. I didn't think of it as a book for people who help parents. And now I very much think of it also as the latter. So it allows me to reach more people. I can only sit in front of so many parent groups and teach the material myself. So I really love this idea of teaching preschool teachers and preschool intervention specialists some of the techniques that are in the book, and librarians. And another thing that's been really interesting is the interest in the book and the content among K through 12 educators. So the hardcover edition of the book, the subtitle was A Literacy Action Plan from Birth to Six, because I was so focused on those early years. But the book came out on the heels of COVID, and there's so much learning loss, and there are so many kids who are so far behind that I had second, third, fourth grade teachers say, this content is still relevant for kids who are much older than 6. And, we're still referring this to parents. So actually in the paperback edition, an update was made, or a change was made to the subtitle of the book to sort of broaden it. And the new subtitle is The Urgency of Early Literacy and the Action Plan to Help Your Child. So it's taken out that age range, although the book definitely emphasizes starting early at birth and building from there. But it also uses the words your child to emphasize the fact that this really is meant to be a practical, easy to digest and implement tool for parents.
So important. And I like what you say about, I realized, doing parent workshops. Well, the book is a parent workshop, right? And individual parents can benefit from that. But when you teach a parent workshop of 30 individuals, that's 30 households that you're reaching. But when you teach a teacher or an educator workshop of 30 teachers or educators, each of those 30 individuals is touching 100 lives. So that's literally 100-fold more of an impact that your work has.
Absolutely. And then it's just been incredible to see the interest in different categories of professionals that I just hadn't given much thought to their existence even. So the librarians were the first group that kind of really felt an affinity for the book. And of course they would, because who more than librarians would be concerned about nurturing the next generation of readers. But then I've done a number of workshops for early childhood conferences and organizations. And then also I mentioned the K through 12, but now also having outreach from organizations of pediatricians, because they're engaging in parents at all of those child visits early in kids' lives. And that's a great opportunity for them to support parents in building these skills as well.
It's amazing. And it started with volunteering. It started with helping in the community. And then in between that and the book, however, there's a really interesting step that I think any mompreneur could very benefit from, because I give you so much credit. You are one of the most prolific people on social media. You have been everyone always comes on and says, well, you want to have a business in this day and age, you gotta be good on social media. And very few people embody it the way you do. You are consistent. You are providing content that is helpful and accessible. And do you feel that before the business existed, before you really even knew if you were going to get a book sold or have these workshops going, what inspired you to get the ball rolling with a very consistent and chock full of very helpful information type of social media?
This is one of the most challenging areas of business for me as a bookish introvert. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings around how we portray ourselves online. And
it's awful. It's hard.
It is. It's not me. I think I'm just old enough that it doesn't come naturally for me to videotape my life. Like, I don't have a phone on a tripod recording me talking to you. I just kind of want to be present and live in my body, in my life, in my conversations with people. And adding this layer of videotaping things is extraordinarily uncomfortable for me. And so I think that is good for other people to hear who also struggle with that, whether it's generational or personality wise, that you can choose how you engage. And so for me, what feels authentic is just trying to be helpful. And that's one of the things that I get from my mom. My mom is a super volunteer. She's almost 80 years old and she's running circles around me every day with all of these activities and meetings, and she's going here and volunteering there. So I try to view the social media as not self-promotion, but just being of service. So if I have a piece of advice or a tip or an idea or a book recommendation, I've had to work, and it is a rocky road, like even figuring out who can help you get these things online. For me, it's even a challenge, like just to hit publish, to post something. So I might have to like send something in, put it in a spreadsheet for somebody else to hit the publish button on, because we would be waiting forever for me to do it. Same thing with my newsletter. I've had a weekly newsletter for years. I want to say maybe like 6-7 years. And so people get it like clockwork every Sunday morning. And then I have a monthly newsletter that's the first Thursday of every month. And none of that would go out if I was a person responsible for hitting send. So it's also a lesson that to have at least one other person on your team that can help if that's not a strength of yours, if you'd rather not be visible.
I think that's so smart. Yes, Maya is not putting herself out there with her family, and not everyone can do that. It depends on what they're doing, the type of work that you do. You can and you thread that line very beautifully. And also, I think one of the things for people listening, if you are looking into a business that is education oriented, one of the things that Maya has done very well is the forgotten side of social media sometimes, which is Pinterest. Talk to the audience about your Pinterest work and how, if someone has an education based business, it might be beneficial for them as well.
What I love about Pinterest is that the content lives in the way that a reel is over. The trend is over in sometimes hours, right? But certainly days or weeks. But Pinterest, you put up something of interest to people and it lives for years. I haven't been posting on Pinterest recently, but at the time when I was actively posting there, I'm still getting a ton of traffic from the people there. The other lesson that can be challenging is being very clear about who your audience is. Some of the content, my most popular content on Pinterest, is related to book crafts. I'm interested in things made of paper, right? So I was at an event a couple weeks ago and they had these gorgeous book page origami kind of centerpieces that were made from old, outdated books, but they're just absolutely gorgeous. Now, if I did, as I would have 5 years ago, a tutorial on the book page centerpiece, it'll get pinned, shared by crafters, right? That those crafters are not necessarily parents of young children who my content resonates with. Some proportion of them are, but not the same amount as someone who pins a piece of content that is about 5 things to do with your child after sharing a story, right? Like one of those readers or Pinterest viewers is more closely interested in the core content that I provide. So I get a ton of people who find me through those Pinterest pins, but only a percentage of them are like converting or resonate with the real content. So that is a lesson for people as well. Like, who do you really want to attract? And
But isn't that all advertising though? And at the end of the day, one of the things that's really important is, even though those people who like your book crafts might not mostly be interested in your book, they increase your follower numbers. And you were able to amass a large number of followers on Pinterest without showing your face, without having the tripod at the Cheesecake Factory. Because of those. And would you say that it was your Pinterest numbers and your overall social media ethos and your consistency with your newsletter that led to your book deal, that helped you get your book deal?
I think that may have been part of it. I think also because we were in COVID and there were so many people quarantined at home with young children. Like, imagine as a parent, your child is trying to do kindergarten online and they've never been on a laptop before. They don't know how to use the mouse. And so it's just also, I think, timing as well. It was the right time for this kind of content because parents had an acute sense of pain around educating their kids. So I think more than social media, that helped.
Well, it's all a combination, and you never know what exactly works. But what we do know is that you were able to land an incredible book deal with an amazing publisher. The book has been beloved, and now that it's in paperback, it will be more accessible to families. So for people who are just finding out about Reading for Our Lives, what type of support will they find inside that they can access for a fraction of the cost of your workshops?
Yes. So the book contains the best evidence-based practices for getting young children on the road to reading, or even, as I mentioned earlier, even older children. Whatever age they are, they have to have certain foundational skills. And so it presents in a clear, direct way practical things that any parent can do to support their child without spending a bunch of money on educational toys or other things that you think may help, when what they really need is you and your voice and your attention. So it is very much meant to be practical and simple. And a lot of it is oriented around creating some sound habits so that you can do easily every day some of these things that really make a big difference over time. Sometimes we want there to be some new magic thing, that we should be doing, but really it's back and forth conversation with our kids. Parents are extraordinarily important as vocabulary builders for children and knowledge builders. And we can also, when we know what we're doing, do a great job of helping kids gain familiarity just with the alphabet and the sounds and how to blend them together. So there's a lot of work that parents can do when it's presented to us simply and with an encouraging tone. So I hope that that is what people will take away from the book.
When I first read the book, I thought of the phrase "talk is cheap," but also I'd like to add to that: talk is cheap, but it's also valuable. Because really, what you said, let's not gloss over. You're like, you just need to talk to your kids. Like, you can help your child become a better reader by talking to them as an infant.
Absolutely. Learning to read is really learning to recognize in writing or in print words and ideas and concepts that kids would understand if you had spoken them to them. So I think a lot of times parents think that reading is something that starts with teachers in kindergarten, and they're thinking about phonics and they're thinking about sounding things out. That's a critically important part of learning to read. But once kids can sound words out, they need to know what those words mean to make sense of the paragraphs and the passages and the pages. And that's why we have these terrible reading scores in our nation. Some kids don't learn to decode. So the print is just doesn't mean anything to them. They're unable to pull words from those symbols on the page. So that is a terrible place to be. The bigger problem, most kids will learn to decode to some level, but can they do it with the fluency that they need to, again, hold on to these ideas and make sense of longer passages? And then there are kids who can sound anything out that you put in front of them, but they just don't have the context for the words because no one's ever spoken to them about those ideas and those concepts. So parents need to know that they can help enormously, particularly with babies and toddlers and preschoolers, with the oral language piece, just talking to them and not talking at them, pausing, asking them questions, giving them a chance to think and respond. It's really the back and forth, not just the adult word count that matters.
And also, one thing that I think has been a part of my parenting journey, which I think is helpful, is not accidentally discouraging a child by laughing or making fun if they make a mistake, but just continuing the conversation in an upbeat and positive way. Because sometimes I realized early on I could be a little sarcastic, or like or sometimes, quite frankly, my child was so cute in their effort to do something that I found myself just laughing out of joy. But a sensitive child takes this as discouraging. You know, we always ready to have a good time, but sometimes when you're having these conversations with kids, how important is it to not babyfy the situation and to treat them like a colleague or an equal as you're having these discussions, even if they're just a cute little kid who's mispronouncing words.
Absolutely. I think that the spirit that we bring to it matters, and kids pick up on that. And so we want to the extent that we can, avoid like doing things that make the conversation less engaging or fun for them. So if they feel ridiculed or they feel defensive, then that's not serving our larger purpose. So I think a big piece of this and parenting in general is just kind of having that mindfulness, that in the moment awareness and presence of not only what you're saying, but how they're interpreting it. And I find this even with the 13-year-old. I'll say one thing and her interpretation of it is wildly different. She'll repeat it back to me like in a more aggressive tone. I'm like, that's not what I said. That's not what I meant. That wasn't. So we have to, particularly with sensitive kids, we have to develop our own sensitivity to respond in ways that are constructive and supportive and nurturing and loving and all the things.
We also have to put our big girl panties on when it comes to these screens. Because, as you know, tech is here, it's ubiquitous. These kids are reading. We don't know what they're comprehending. But how do parents balance screen time with the activities that promote literacy? Even though screen time sometimes is reading, right? But a lot of times it's videos. How do we gingerly get more literacy activities embedded in our day-to-day?
I think it helps if the parent starts early. And also, if the parent is aware of the tech usage you're modeling, if you're always on your phone, then of course the phone feels like an appropriate way to spend time for the kid. And also, it takes away, if you're locked in on your phone, scrolling, looking at whatever you're looking at, then that's taking away from those deeper, richer conversations with your child. So we have to start with ourselves. And some parents have found it helpful just to have like strong boundaries around tech. Like everybody's phones are plugged in and charging on the kitchen counter at X o'clock at night, and no one's accessing them until whatever time the next day. But the extent that you can delay giving them access to devices and the extent to which you can be disciplined around how much access they have to it. I'm not a tech savvy person. I have friends who manage the screen. They can remotely just turn off their child's, Wi-Fi access or whatever. I haven't gotten into all that. I only have one anyway, who's getting older, but it's what we model, what we tolerate. And sometimes you need people, friends, or your partner to affirm, you're the parent, you set the rules. Don't let these kids run us. Because they'll say, oh, everybody has this. Everybody has Snapchat. Everybody has this. Everybody doesn't, because you don't.
First and foremost, it's the blackest phrase, not gonna let them run us. I remember when I was trying to figure out how to become an actual effective mother, and I would call my mom and I would tell her what was going on. And she was always like, you can't let your kid run over you, okay? Like, you gotta let them know who's the parent. Which was in a time where there was corporal punishment.
Right.
It was a simpler task. And now we understand the importance of respecting our children, respecting their boundaries, figuring out how to cope with the ubiquitous nature of social media, screen time, and our deep knowledge that you've got to have more than that is difficult.
It is. And we're getting to a phase where some people believe that the core kind of reading and writing skills are less important because you can voice text. You don't even have to write anymore. You can voice text this. You can put it in this AI to clean up your grammar. You can, cobble together these tools to navigate, but there is no substitute for being able to think on your own and thinking on paper through reading and writing and underlining and, all of the things that we've been doing for years. It matters in just the development of you as a person, even beyond school. So these tech tools will disguise some of the weaknesses that some people have in their literacy and their education. But I always say to my daughter, I was like, do you want to be the person who is reliant upon all these things, or do you want to be the person who creates it, owns it, and profits from it?
What are some of the initiatives or projects that you have looking ahead that you want to continue on, how you want to build upon your workshops? Is there another book in the works? Like, how do you plan to further support early literacy development so our children have options?
I'm still doing some sort of small group virtual book clubs kind of as a part of the tour for this book. So I'm trying to do one in every state. So if you're from Alaska or some of the other states I haven't done those for, definitely reach out through my website, mayasmart.com. But I still enjoy the small groups and the conversations and being able to directly answer people's questions. And then again, I'm doing the work training instructional coaches on how to engage more effectively with parents and give parents practical tools to support their kids as readers. So I'm still doing that work and work with pediatricians. Again, I'll say family-facing professionals. I have resources and content to help you be more effective in helping the families you serve. I have a real interest in doing more work with home visitors. So people who are, right there in the living room with new moms and their little ones, and they're talking about nursing, and they're talking about all the things, all of these transitions into motherhood. It's like my big dream that getting new parents thinking about brain development and early learning will be a part of those conversations as well.
There are so many kids and families in need. You can't reach them all. There might be people listening to this who say, I have my own twist on this. I would like to do this type of work as well. I don't know how to get started. I don't know how I go from an idea in my head to workshops, books, presentations. What is your advice to someone who feels that they have a gift, whether it is specifically literacy education, or it could be science, it could be tech, it could be AI, it could be anything? What is your advice to someone who wants to create a business in the helping space?
I would
How
say
should they think about beginning?
I think that they should immerse themselves in what's out there and sort of uncover what their unique spin or take on it is. I've been support a number of different nonprofit organizations, but have no desire to start one or lead one myself. But those 5 years that I spent volunteering in all of these different elements of the space really refined my understanding of the problem. And so in business, you're never going to make any money if you're not solving a problem, if you're not giving people something that they want. And so taking the time to figure that out, not what you want to give them, but
I love that so much. I laugh. My children just had an interview for the National Urban League's business camp, and one child, she was like, "What kind of business do you want to start?" And they were throwing out ideas, and then someone said, because they're kids, like lemonade stand, and Miss Rhonda, she was like, "No, no, because what kind of problem does that solve? You need to know that the first step of business is you need to solve a problem." And I just was cracking up. It's so cute. But you're totally right. Like, you're solving a problem. Kids can't read good. What is the problem?
and you have to find the people who have a sense of urgency about that. And it's not the people you think. The parents who are in the greatest need for the kind of content that's in my book are not interested in reading 200 pages about it. Like, they're not even aware that they have a problem. There are going to be the parents who their child is in school, they're having the parent-teacher conference, and they learn at that point when the child's 8, 9, 10, 11 that there is a problem. So part of my journey in business was figuring out, well, who gets that this is a problem?
Right.
Community leaders get it. Employers who don't have people who are literate enough to follow their policies and procedures and do the work know that there's a problem. Librarians know there's a problem. So
which is why it's smart for you to expand your offerings to the people who can help the kids whose parents don't necessarily know the urgency.
And that's another business lesson. Like, you are not the right messenger sometimes for everyone. Like, you have your people, and a lot of this is about attracting and repelling. So there are some people, and that's why the book helps, because by the time someone spent that length of time with me, or even better yet, listen to the audiobook, so listen to me for 6 hours, they're more receptive and ready for like a consulting engagement or something than someone who hasn't. It's sort of like they're self-selecting. So some people, there is a mom somewhere who is unaware that they have a problem. This isn't on their radar, and reading for our lives isn't the best way to reach that mom. But you're right. If I reach the home visitor that goes into her home and is from her community and has a relationship with her and understands all the things that she's facing day to day, that's a better messenger.
Before we go, our time's almost up, but my favorite segment is what I call Mompreneurs Manifestation. And I ask all of our guests what you're trying to make happen and how we can help bring it into the universe for you.
So I'm trying to eliminate reading achievement gaps between Black children and white children. There's nothing wrong with Black children that prevents them from becoming skilled, fluent, thriving readers. Like, we're evidence of that. So when kids aren't having those results, it's because there are things in their environment or their schools or their homes, or there are other adult things that are responsible for the outcome. So I want to raise public awareness of what goes into reading success early, so that more parents can give those kids those gifts so they can thrive.
How can we help in this endeavor?
You can help in this endeavor if you have a Black child, if you know a Black child, which is everyone, right? Think of what you would do for your child. Think about, if you have an older child, think about what they needed to be on this path, And what they needed, and the book outlines all of this, is they need back and forth conversation with you, even before they can speak. So treating those coos and babbles as if they're conversation and responding, and really helping parents, any parent you know at church, your neighbor, your niece, whoever has a baby, let them know the power in their voice and the power in the relationship that they forge with their child just through conversation. And then sharing books is important because it introduces a wider range of vocabulary and ideas than they would get in everyday speech, where honestly, many parents are like, sit down, be quiet. You're not using the most.
I know, or they get frustrated that their kids. I remember when mine were very little, especially my firstborn, I was very much adamant that we practice from the time 2 years old, eye contact, asking questions at dinner. And there was like a 6-month period where he was just like, oh my God, I hate this so much. But I was like, we have a conversation. What do we say? How was your day? My day was great, thank you. What did you saw? And I was like, come on, can we come with new questions? That was it. How was your day? What did you saw? But eventually it clicked, and I never made him feel bad about that. I was just good. How's your day? What did you saw? It's a running joke in my household now. Because now they're delightful. They're ready for any dinner party.
Right.
And I think sometimes parents expect it to all happen so fast. It's for the most intelligent of children. It can be the slowest of burn. And even still, like you said, with your 13-year-old, we cannot expect perfection. We just have to expect a snowball of learned lessons over continued communication and efforts.
Absolutely. And it's okay to start small. We can't expect, especially with the little ones, their attention span. So read the story for I always say 5 good minutes. Because people have these images of people reading Harry Potter for an hour every night, and that's not the reality. So
there's a reason picture books are 32 pages. It should not be. They don't have the attention span. You exhausted, but that's better than nothing. You start small, you snowball into something incredible, and that's exactly what you've done with your business, with your book. And another thing people can do who are listening is a lot of times people buy this book even when they don't have kids. They buy it, they donate it, they buy 20 copies, they donate one to each classroom in their school, they donate them to the local tutoring center. That's the way people can really help to spread the information. Or they can bring a workshop to their area. Hey, Alaska people. But anybody can spread the word and the movement.
Absolutely.
So now we've learned all about what you do, you're a literacy advocate, how people can learn from you through your workshops and books. Can you tell us, Maya Payne Smart, where people can find you and the work that you do so they can learn more on their own?
Yes, I am online at mayasmart.com, MAYASMART.com. And you'll see a resources page there. Every Monday, there's something new. So it might be a list of children's books about spring, or a list of, or an activity that you can do, a nature letter scavenger hunt that you can do with your child. So everything is literacy related. I have read with me recipes. Now, I will say all the recipes don't taste the best because they're about spelling patterns and ingredients and words that the kids can read, but it's a fun activity to do with little ones. So every Monday there's something new in that resources section. The newsletter comes out every Sunday. And you can see my different speaking topics at mayasmart.com/speaking if you'd like to bring me out for a workshop virtually or in person. So that's my virtual home.
Thanks so much for listening to and watching Mompreneurs. As a reminder, a brand new episode goes live each week on Urban One Podcast Network, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit urban1podcast.com to learn more. That's urban, the number one, podcast.com.